Who did we gain our independence from?
I don't know. Didn't they go to war?
Yeah, who did we fight against?
Everybody. I don't even know.
Take a guess. What country?
Korea.
Yes. The 69th President of the United States of America.
69th. Richard Nixon.
Who fought in the Civil War?
Soldiers.
Who against who?
America and France.
Who fought in the Civil War?
I don't know that one. I don't know.
Take a guess. Who against who?
Civil War.
You know this.
I don't.
Dig deep.
Civil War. Hey y'all, who fought in the Civil War? Cam. Who fought in the Civil War? Who fought in the Civil War? Yeah. I forgot, honestly.
Take a guess. Who against who?
It was the U.S. and the Japanese.
No way you got that right. You just guessed?
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Stephen A. Smith, who is trying to make a name for himself as not just a sports commentator, but also a political commentator as well, too. He's trying to get into politics. Even though the more I hear of Stephen A's politics, the more I'm starting to believe that Stephen A's politics are probably about the same as Bill Maher's politics, okay? He's just a classical liberal who sometimes says things that make sense, which, you know, that would make sense for a classical liberal, right? That's why they're classically liberal, right? But Stephen A. Smith was asked by CNN's Abby Phillips about having testing requirements to be in office, okay? He was asked about a mental competency test. He was asked about Vivek Ramaswamy's proposal in regards to raising the voting age unless you can pass a civics test. And I want to go ahead and play his response in this exchange with Abby Phillips because I think that his position here is interesting, and I want to talk about it. So without further ado, roll the clip.
Yes. If you were to look at the state of Washington, the candidates that we have, do you think that there should be a requirement for people to step down? And at what age should that be?
I don't think age should have anything to do with it, but I do believe that when you're looking at somebody whose health is clearly debilitating, at least to some degree, we're living in a society right now, Abby, where those folks are being insulted.
One of the things, I mean, we played a Nikki Haley Biden. She's been going after President Biden on the age thing, but she's also proposed this mental competency test for politicians over the age of 75. I mean, do you agree with that idea?
Yes, I really do. And the reason why, because there's nothing wrong. If you're just saying there is a standard that needs to be met and it's applicable to all on either side of the aisle, I'm all for it. Because we certainly want people that are cogent enough and alert enough and in a position to handle their business. You're talking about a job that requires you to run the country, the commander-in-chief, for crying out loud. And it's not just about when it comes to law enforcement. You're talking about tax reform. You're talking about education. You're talking about immigration. You're talking about a plethora of issues.
Shouldn't there be a mental competency test for all of them? Shouldn't there be a mental competency test for all of them?
I'm saying it's a standard. I'm only speaking to the standard. I'm saying no one should be ostracized and no one should be immune from having to be subjected to the same standards. If there is a job, any job that you point to out there, it's a requirement that comes with it. You can't just walk on the air and be Abby Phillips. I mean, excuse me. This is a young lady that's been doing great work at CNN, and before that, the Washington Post, the Politico, and the list goes on. Stephen A. Smith, New York Daily News, Philadelphia Inquirer, Fox Sports, ESPN. You can't just walk through the door and do those jobs. There's a requirement that you have to meet in order to do certain things, regardless of the profession. Why should the presidency of the United States or any elected office be any different? I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of tests and requirements, and since we have you here, I might as well ask you, because Vivek Ramaswamy, who's also running in this Republican field, he's proposing a constitutional amendment that would require that young people who are 18 to 24 years old, have to pass a civics test or serve 6 months in the military in order to even vote. Is that fair?
No. Excuse my language. Hell no. That is not. This is America, and the reality of the situation is, last time I checked, there isn't a draft taking place to compel you to serve your country. It would be nice if everybody wanted to do it, but in America, you have the freedom to do otherwise. And as far as I'm concerned, to have some kind of constitutional amendment that requires you to serve in that capacity, a capacity that he deems fitting, I think is a bit self-serving at this particular moment in time, because he's an individual that's obviously running for the presidency of the United States, and that's going to ingratiate him with some of the folks on the right. I get that. As a matter of fact, I'm scheduled to interview him in a matter of days. I'm glad you brought that up, because
that'll
I'm going
be very
to ask
interesting.
him about that. Because I certainly don't agree with that. But I understand why he's doing it, because there are folks, voters on the right, that's going to, that's going to sway them to some degree. And right now, I think we're living in an age where we see politicians, particularly when you're on the campaign trail, you're willing to say whatever you believe will curry votes. And I think this is one of those examples. I'm not saying he does or does not mean it. I don't know him. I've never met him. I've never talked to him. But the bottom line is, I find it very, very difficult to believe that you would just come out your mouth and say something like that as a potential elected official in the year 2023, unless you believed it was going to work favorably for you in getting votes.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, I don't understand why people can't grasp this very simple concept about Vivek Ramaswamy when it comes to his proposals and the things that he's saying, because everybody seems to understand this when it comes to any other politician, because we all know how politicians are. A vast majority of the things that they say, when they actually do say things, because most of them say nothing, right? When they actually do say stuff, you don't expect them to actually really get it done, because we have this thing called checks and balances in the government. So clearly, right? Everybody knows that all of these candidates and the things that they propose are not going to get done, okay? Because they're going to have opposition to what they want to do, right? Everybody should understand, everybody should know that. So when it comes to Vivek Ramaswamy's proposition of raising the voting age to 25, or you need to pass a civics test, or you need to serve in the military, in my opinion, I think most people should know that the likelihood of that actually happening is very slim. But at the very least, we know where Vivek Ramaswamy's mind is at in regards to how he's thinking about that issue. And that's what really matters to me, because the spirit of what he's saying is getting to the heart of a problem that we have in our so-called democracy, and why I don't really like democracy, why I'm not a democracy guy, which is that we have a lot of people who are voting who literally know nothing about our government, right? And that's the beauty of what Vivek Ramaswamy is saying, and the issue that he's bringing up that we don't talk about enough, because we have Democrats out here proposing for 16-year-olds to vote, right? 16-year-olds, kids, children who have no life experience, who know nothing about why they're voting. Well, why are Democrats doing that? Well, because they know it's easy to get people to vote Democrat or to vote liberal or progressive, because one, they're brainwashing kids in school to do so, right? And two, Democrats have this thing where they just tell people to go out and vote, and because they know most people who are ignorant, who know nothing, if they go vote, even though they otherwise wouldn't vote unless being told to vote, they're going to go and vote Democrat. This is why they do it. And all Democrats got to do is say Republicans are racist or sexist, or they're engaged in some sort of bigotry, and they want to cut your welfare and your food stamps, right? That's all Democrats got to say. And the ignorant voter, okay, they're going to go out there and they're going to vote D, right? They're going to vote D. And they know that young kids are the most gullible. If somebody has to tell you to go vote, then you probably shouldn't vote, right? I'm just saying. But it really kind of blows my mind that Stephen A. Smith can sit up here and say, yeah, well, we need a competency test for politicians who are 75 and older, right? Yeah, we need to have that type of test. But the people who actually vote the politicians into office, they don't need to demonstrate that, hey, you need to know something about the government, right? You need to know at least the basics. You should know as much as For example, an immigrant who comes over here and wants to gain citizenship in this country, you should know at the very least as much as they know about the government, right? I don't think that that's a radical idea. I really don't. Because if we had that in place, you wouldn't need a mental competency test, because people like Joe Biden, who again ran on, hey, the other party's racist, they're going to cut your food stamps, they're going to cut your welfare, Trump bad, right? That's what he ran on, right? People like Joe Biden, who, again, when he was running, clearly was not in his right state of mind. If Vivek Ramaswamy's proposal was in place, if the voting age was raised to 25, I would argue that Joe Biden wouldn't have got elected, right? There's no way. There's no way. Because you would have had a bunch of ignorant folks, right, who probably shouldn't be voting in the first place. They would have sat it out. Again, I'm so serious. The reflexive pushback that people give to raising the voting age to 25 or pass a civics test or 6 months in the military, the reflexive pushback tells you everything you need to know about the confidence that the American people have in our education system. We have no confidence at all, right? Because what people are concerned about is something that we should not be concerned about, or we wouldn't be concerned about if we actually had confidence in our education system, which is, oh, well, what happens when you fail, right? Is it right to take away somebody's right to vote when they're 18 because they can't pass a civics test? Well, again, if kids were actually learning basic civics, which is what that immigration citizenship test is, I took some practice questions. They weren't very hard, right? It was a pretty easy test to me, okay? I'm just saying, this is stuff that kids should be learning and should know when they graduate. And this stuff should be ingrained in their head. It shouldn't be something where they're allowed to just take the class and to get a C, and then, you know, they don't really know anything, and then they can go out and they can vote. No, they should actually have to know it. We have kids in this country who can't read or write. How in the hell are they informed voters? They're not. But yeah, you have people advocating for people who are uninformed to come out here and vote, and then you wonder why we get cities like Chicago that constantly vote against their own best interests. How does that happen? Well, it's because the honest to God truth is that the voters are ignorant. They're ignorant, right? I mean, again, how does Chicago end up with a mayor worse than Lori Lightfoot? The problems in Chicago are clear. Crime is the number one problem, okay? You had the moderate Democrat, Paul Vallas, who ran on, hey, let's back the police, okay? Let's get tougher on crime. You had the progressive, woke revolutionary, Brandon Johnson, who literally ran on defund the police, let's allow illegals to take over the city. That's what he ran on. And he was very loud about it, right? He made it very clear, this is what, I want to do. The voters of Chicago elect Brandon Johnson, literally the worst possible pick to be their mayor, and they're the loudest in regards to complaining about the crime and the takeover of illegals. What you see in these liberal cities in regards to their voting habits is a reflection of our education system. It's a reflection of what happens when you encourage people who should not vote to vote. And this is why I'm not a democracy guy, right? This is why when people ask how you feel about democracy, read about how Socrates felt about democracy. That's how I feel about democracy. Now, I like representative democracies, okay? I like our constitutional republic, which is a form of a democracy, right? But what I don't like is full democracy. What I don't like is encouraging people who don't have the skill, because voting is a skill, okay, who don't have the skills necessary in order to decide who should be running a government. I don't like when people encourage those people to vote because they shouldn't in a functioning democracy. An educated voter is the key to a functioning democracy. A functioning democracy is a great thing. It's an amazing thing. Filtered democracy, again, is amazing. But full unfiltered democracy is not. It leads to chaos and destruction, which is, again, why you see what is happening in these inner liberal cities. Again, it's a reflection of our education system and the fact that we have such low standards for our education system. We have such low standards for our children. People, again, they're reflexive about it because they're like, oh, well, what if a child doesn't pass? I'm not worried about that because my standard in regards to education is that, no, we get our education system to the point where there is no question about whether or not the average student can pass one of those civics tests, the same civic test that they give to an immigrant coming over here trying to earn their way to be a citizen. And what you're going to see as a result of that is a more informed voter. And a more informed voter is going to lead to better outcomes. I'm saddened sometimes. I'm saddened by just the low expectations that us of American people, like, we don't aspire to be the best anymore. We don't aspire to dominate. We don't aspire to have high standards in regards to how we carry ourselves anymore. We've gotten to the point that we just don't care if we're in last place. We don't care if we're producing dummies. We don't care about suboptimal results. We don't care. And that's what really bothers me the most about the current culture in this country is that mediocrity is acceptable. And the biggest point that people are missing when they're discussing Vivek Ramaswamy's proposal is the fact that, again, it says a lot about the current state of this country where we have people who are voting that can't even tell you a basic fact about the government. They don't know the three branches. They don't know the role of a senator, okay, versus the president. They don't know anything about the Supreme Court. They don't know anything. But yet you have one party in this country coming out and telling these people, vote for us because of racism, bigotry, sexism, and all this other crazy stuff. That in reality is not the biggest issue at all in these people's lives. At least if you wait to the age of 25 and you can't pass the civics test, hey, at the very least, you got some more life experience. You actually got a job, or you more than likely have a job where you're bringing in a decent amount of income where you realize that, oh, I don't want it taxed into oblivion, right? Because that's what tends to happen. People tend to become more conservative as they get older, as they get more life experience. Why is that? Well, because, again, people understand that when you get life experience, you realize we're not living in Kufa Cocoa Puff world. We're not living in La La world. And that in the real world, the things that Democrats promise aren't necessarily good. But you learn that through life experience. You learn that through actually getting a proper education or being properly educated out of high school, which should be the standard for every single child. I mean, that should be the bare minimum. The bare minimum is that every single child should better pass this test. We shouldn't even be asking questions. But the fact that we have people out here that really are that concerned about kids passing this test tells you the state of our education system is garbage. And that's what he's really getting at. What he's really getting at is the fact that our education system is so bad. The state of our country is so bad in regards to expectations for the average citizen that you have people that are literally concerned about a kid not being able to pass a test where all he needs to know is the basic facts about this country. Again, it's a shame. It really is. And then you wonder why we get mentally incompetent politicians. Well, it's because, again, look who we allow to vote. It's really that simple. It might sound controversial, but this is the reality. We have an issue in this country. We have an education crisis that is not being solved. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.